Hello and welcome. You're watching Global Lens on News 9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you. Let's get started with our big focus. Do you often wonder which city in the world you would like to live in if given a choice? Where you're likely to find the best quality of life? Where you would perhaps want to spend your sunset years if given an opportunity? Well, the latest list of the world's most livable and least livable cities is out. So listen carefully. The Economist magazine's intelligence unit, which assesses cities worldwide annually, has released its Global Livability Index 2024. And for the third year in a row, Vienna in Austria has been crowned the world's best city to live in, with flawless scores in stability, healthcare and education. Vienna is lauded for its unparalleled mix of cultural vibrancy and top-notch public services. At the other end of the spectrum, Pakistan's Karachi and Bangladesh's capital Dhaka have been ranked among the least livable cities in the world, as they feature in the bottom 10 of the list. Wondering where Indian cities figure on this index? Well, you're likely to be disappointed, as no Indian city features in the top 50 livable cities of the world as per this index. Capital Delhi, Bengaluru, Mumbai, Chennai, Ahmedabad have all been ranked between 50 and 70. Let's now tell you about the 10 best and 10 worst cities to live in. According to this index, Vienna in Austria, Copenhagen in Denmark, Zurich in Switzerland, Melbourne in Australia, Calgary in Canada, Geneva in Switzerland, Sydney in Australia, Vancouver in Canada, Osaka in Japan and Auckland in New Zealand are the most desirable cities in the world that offer the finest quality of life. As for the worst cities, here are the 10 cities that feature at the bottom of this list. Caracas in Venezuela, Kiev in Ukraine, Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea, Harare in Zimbabwe, Dhaka in Bangladesh, Karachi in Pakistan, Lagos in Nigeria, Algiers in Algeria, Tripoli in Libya and Damascus in Syria. Of course, some of these cities are war-torn. But what are the primary metrics on which cities are evaluated? The Global Livability Index ranks the livability of 173 cities around the world across 5 key categories. These are stability, healthcare, culture and environment, education and infrastructure. This year's survey reveals an increase in average scores thanks to improvements in healthcare and education in developing countries. However, this progress was largely counterbalanced by declines in scores for several top-tier cities. For instance, the conflict between Israel and Hamas caused Tel Aviv to plummet 20 places to 112th. While regional stability scores suffered due to the conflict, significant improvements in education and healthcare in many Gulf countries have boosted overall livability. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Riyadh and Jeddah saw the greatest score increases. Let's analyze some of the other findings. Vienna took the top spot, earning the title of the most livable city in the world for a third consecutive year after it received perfect scores in 4 of the index's 5 categories. But a lack of major sporting events contributed to its lower tally of 93.5 out of 100 in the culture and environment category. There are other European cities that made the top 5, 3 of them in fact: Copenhagen, Zurich and Geneva. All 3 are notable for their modest population size, which tends to lead to lower crime rates and less crowded roads and public transport systems. 2 Canadian cities, Calgary and Vancouver, and 4 in the Asia Pacific, Melbourne, Sydney, Osaka and Auckland, complete the top 10. In fact, the top 30 cities are in Europe. War-torn Damascus remains rooted to the bottom of the table. The Syrian capital has been the least livable city in the index since 2013 and scored just 30.7 this year. Its stability score of 20 is tied with Karachi as the lowest of all the cities surveyed. Kiev also performs badly in this category, pushing it into the bottom 10 cities on the index for the second year in a row. After a sharp drop and rebound over the COVID years, globally, the average livability score increased by just 0.06 points over the past year. Civil unrest troubled Europe as French farmers blocked motorways into Paris and protests against immigration policies sprung up across the continent. Riots in New Caledonia and campus protests across America, which happened after the survey took place, don't bode well for next year's index, according to this report. An acute housing crisis has pulled down infrastructure scores for Canada and Australia. The largest US cities, Los Angeles and New York, are ranked at 58th and 70th, respectively. The cost of living crisis has also taken a toll. Although inflation is coming down in many countries, its effects, particularly on housing costs, are still being felt. The quality of urban living may be at its highest in well over a decade, but not all are experiencing that equality. That equally, I beg your pardon. The question we're asking on Global Lens tonight is this: what makes a city truly livable and desirable? Are most of our cities becoming practically unlivable thanks to rapidly exploding populations, income inequalities, inadequate infrastructure, massive crowding, poor and myopic urban planning, and insufferable air pollution? All right, let's introduce our guests at this point. I'm joined by Dr. Sudhir Krishna, former Secretary, Urban Development of the Government of India and Chairman Smart Cities for the Technical Committee at the Bureau of Indian Standards. He joins us live from Gurugram. And also on the panel with us tonight, Dr. Ishwar Gilada, Secretary General, People's Health Organization. He joins us from Mumbai. Welcome, gentlemen. Dr. Sudhir Krishna, let me begin with you. Does it surprise you that no Indian city figures in the 50 most livable cities in the world as per this Global Livability Index? Of course, we can perhaps draw some comfort from the fact that even a city like New York has a rather low ranking, somewhere around the 70th. But what, according to you, makes a city truly livable and desirable? And really, why do Indian cities lag so far behind some of the top cities that feature on this index?
I think our country and cities have a different challenge than the European cities. And the challenge is that the urban migration. We have people migrating from rural areas to the cities continuously, whereas in the European cities it has stabilized over after there was some issue after the Second World War, but over time it has stabilized. But in our country, this is continuing. So cities are getting a lot of migrants, but the cities have not prepared themselves to receive the migrants. And these migrants are coming to the extent, I mean, one thumb rule, you can say that about 20% will be affluent people and 80% will be in the lowest category of, security guard kind of thing, and the delivery boys and so on. So they are ending up without adequate income sources. They are ending up in the slums and so on. So this challenge is continuing. The cities have not geared up to receive the migrant population. That is a very, very big challenge. And followed by that, the lack of adequate regional planning, where we find the cities get flooded whenever there is a heavy rain. And also we have an inadequate transportation system. So people congregate to the central areas. They do not move out to the far-flung area easily, particularly the poorer people. They are reluctant to move out to the layout places which are a little away because of the commutation issues. So I think there are some fundamental challenges are there, which we are grappling with that. But I suppose we have to give greater attention to these things, and it will take maybe about a few years that we can correct the matter. But as of now, the migrant population and in unprepared cities to receive the migrants is a very major challenge. Yeah, one more point I would say, and that is that local governments are relatively weak here. You see the European countries particularly, and even in the Americas also, the mayors are very strong. The city governments are very strong. So city government and people very close connect. So here that municipalities are functionally not very strong, So that also is an issue which we have to resolve. So all these things, I suppose, we have to take care. And technology, we are behind nobody. In terms of technology, we have all the best of technology, and our manpower, high quality manpower, is providing technological support to the world. So that way we are not behind. But in governance arrangements, in planning arrangements, in a vision arrangement of local governance, these are the things we have to take care.
Okay, multiple challenges, no doubt, and local governance is really our Achilles heel, according to Dr. Krishna. We also have Dilip Chenoy, former Secretary General of FICCI, joining us on Global Lens at this point. A warm welcome, Mr. Chenoy. I need to take a quick break here on Global Lens. We'll continue this conversation with our guests on the other side.
The confidence is certainly back in the market.
Do tighten your seat belt so that you can withstand volatility.
I have one humble request to all the viewers of News 9 is that please don't go, there will be a lot of choppiness, there will be a lot of volatility. Look at long term, don't look at short term. Buy quality, don't buy quantity, and wish you all the very best.
हमारा टाइम आ गया है और रहेगा.
This and more. Streaming on News 9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News 9 Live with me, Neha Khanna, and we're discussing the Global Livability Index that has been released by the Economist magazine's intelligence unit. What does it tell us? Well, many things. One of which is that Vienna is the most livable city in the world. In fact, the top 30 most desirable cities in the world are in Europe. And no, India is not doing well at all as per this index. Let's now get a word in from our other guest. Dilip Chenoy, let me ask you this question before I go across to Dr. Gilada. India's capital, Delhi, Bengaluru, Mumbai, Chennai, Ahmedabad. These are our biggest urban centers, megalopolises, but they figure between 50 and 70 on the Global Livability Index, which is essentially measured on 5 major metrics as we mentioned at the start of the show. The question we're really asking tonight is, are most of our cities actually becoming practically unlivable because of exploding populations, income inequalities, inadequate infrastructure, massive crowding, poor and myopic urban planning, and insufferable air pollution? Surely we here in India seem to be doing a lot of things wrong on all these fronts.
So Neha, I think the first panelist actually gave a very valid and cogent explanation of why these challenges are there. But if I were to just give you a statistic, just to actually tell you what the challenges, and you mentioned population, he mentioned urban migration. If you take the total population of Australia, the NCR region has greater population than the total population of Australia. So we are really looking at a huge number of people within the whole area. The second point, if you look at your ranking and if you look at healthcare facilities, Delhi, or Bangalore for that matter, have a large number of healthcare and very modern healthcare facilities. But if you convert it into per capita or, look at that, then, we plummet down the whole kind of region, the ranking. The third, and this is really a challenge, which is environment. If you look at the Indian cities and if you look at the cities that are ranked in the top, they don't have the type of environment problem that we have. And therefore, if you look at the infrastructure kind of impact, again, on a per capita basis, even if you have large number of roads, if you have any, that sort of number, but if it comes to per capita, you have a challenge. Delhi actually, and this is not an index which everyone tracks, but if you look at the city with the most number of trees, surprisingly, it'll be Delhi. So there are positives and negatives for a city, but the challenge here, as was mentioned, as also you pointed out, is how do we deal with the large population, the large influx of people. Second, the challenge is that, as was mentioned, the local, whether it's the Municipal Corporation of Delhi in Delhi or the NDMC areas are much better in Delhi. But if you look at the mayors and the municipalities, the best municipality, ranked there is, or the largest municipality is Ahmedabad, right? But then the cleanest city in India is Indore. So you have this whole challenge in India when it comes to one, the population, two, the planning. If you look at the planning of the cities, they have not been planned for this kind of an expansion. So if you go back and see Hyderabad initially was very small. It was during Chandrababu Naidu's chief ministership that he actually created 4 nodes in 4 corners of Hyderabad and expanded the city and did the inner ring road and the outer ring road and tried to actually decongest the city. But the number of people coming in there, that also has not actually happened. So multiple reasons why we are not doing well on the index. There is a possibility, and if we get our act together and we focus on infrastructure and this whole smart city mission that we are planning, we might move up the ranks, but things we can't change very easily going forward. One is the environmental issue, because it's a kind of a weather phenomena, although people talk about different reasons for that. And the second is the per capita kind of infrastructure or healthcare facilities that we have in our cities. So if these indexes are taken, these matrices are taken as the ranking in the index, we have a huge challenge ahead.
We certainly have a huge challenge ahead, and let's certainly hope, Mr. Chinoy, that we can get our act together, because you referred to Delhi's green lungs, but let's face it, we live in a gas chamber, and this is the national capital of India. That is our reality. And then let's look at certain other factors. Let me go across to Dr. Ishwar Gilada, who joins us from Mumbai. Dr. Gilada, the BMC is the richest civic agency in all of Asia. A bigger budget than, any other city you can think of in the entire continent. And yet, what happens every time monsoon arrives in Mumbai? One spell of heavy showers and the city comes to a standstill, roads cave in, they turn into rivers, there are potholes and craters everywhere, there are also deaths and all sorts of unfortunate and tragic incidents. Take the case of Delhi, it's the national capital. And yet we know what happens when it rains, for instance, the way our roads give way. So my point simply is that yes, population is a huge challenge. Yes, urban migration poses a huge challenge. But at the end of the day, poor local governance and, if I might add, corruption, are these not really big contributing factors that are unfortunately forcing us to live in what some might argue are practically unlivable cities now?
Thank you very much for having me on the show. Really speaking, I'm a misfit in this kind of scenario, but lived all my life in India and almost 42 years in Mumbai. What I understood, that if we talk about 75 years of India after independence, first 25 years have gone in roti, kapda, makan. So our major struggle was feeding the people. The next 25 years have gone in bijli, sadak, pani. So we wanted to provide them potable water, sanitation, etc. Next 25 years, they are dedicated to education, healthcare, and some other infrastructure. So if we compare ourselves with any developed countries, we have been independent for centuries. I think it is wrong to compare. Secondly, population is a problem, but it is not the real problem. The real problem is civic sense and lot of disparity. So, though we consider that we are going to be closer to number 4 in economy, but if we calculate per capita, it is very low. So I think even calculating ourselves as a 4th largest economy in the world, that is wrong, because if you are number 1 in population, you will be number one, number two, number three, lot of problems and lot of issues also. Secondly, lot of new infrastructures are created. The core of the issue is not helping people. It is basically helping themselves. And as you said, lot of corruption. So if you find lot of big bridges are coming up, lot of things are coming up, there they will look at how much is the budget. So when you say that Mumbai is the richest municipal corporation, or when you talk about even ministry allocation, all the allocation depend upon which ministry has how much budget. So everything depends on budget, everything depends on economy, and everything depends upon undercurrents. So under this scenario, it is wrong to compare India or any other livable cities in India with other people, other cities. Secondly, if you look at even 10 top livable cities in India, our ranking is around 64% to 58%. And there the ranking is 92%. So we are far behind them also. And most important is the happiness index. In our happiness index, we are far below, even below Nepal, below Pakistan, and below Sri Lanka. So I think we need to look at other parameters.
But sir, if we are going to continue living in unlivable conditions, I doubt our happiness index is likely to go up significantly anytime in the foreseeable future. Let me also bring in Dr. P.S. Rana at this point, former Chairman and Managing Director, Housing and Urban Development Corporation Limited. Thanks very much, Dr. Rana, for joining me on Global Lens tonight. Now, I understand that, a developing nation like India has huge challenges, and therefore it may not be entirely fair to compare our cities and the infrastructure we have with European cities which top this list, the Global Livability Index. Population is a huge challenge that we face. But, with all due respect to Dr. Gilada, I would like to point out that if we aim to be a developed nation, Viksit Bharat, by 2047, then surely we've got to aim higher. Our cities right now, including national capital Delhi and Mumbai and Bengaluru, currently figure between 50 and 70 on this Global Livability Index. And I think it's a bit unfair to, attribute the mess that we find ourselves in a lot of times to just a lack of civic sense amongst the citizens, because, like I pointed out, finances don't seem to be a problem. Look how rich the BMC is. MCD is a very rich municipality as well. The question is the money, spent well? There are always allegations of corruption. You hand out contracts to new contractors for road building every second year. One spell of heavy rains in the monsoon and everything goes to hell. So really, where does the problem lie? Is it local governance? Is it at the state level? Or is it that government after government, even at the central level, hasn't really prioritized infrastructure development the way they needed to? We talk about smart cities, but do we really have smart cities if you look at the state of our urban infrastructure?
Even the definition of smart city itself does not say how the city will be smart, in what respect it will be smart. And just a portion of it, if we make it some functional activity smart, then it does not mean the city is smart. Now, as you say, the money, money is not the constraint. Money is available if we plan and manage the city properly. I tell you even a very small thing. I think the face of the city are our road right-of-ways. If you move along the roads, what you see? No symmetry, no cleanliness, all encroached, all absurd. That is the first view you get of a city. And I tell you, even when I was with HUDCO, I had proposed 3 lakes in Delhi. And I had offered the 100% funding for the lakes from HUDCO. Today we are having the water supply is not available. Will that give a good livable index for the city if people are fighting for water? And I tell you, had those lakes been implemented, it would have a capacity of 2 billion cubic meter of water at any given time. The water which overflowed during the monsoon could have been stored. So it is basically the will to implement and plan. So I agree our cities have outgrown. And if you remember, if you have any idea of, along with Dr. Kalam, we had proposed a concept of Pura. The idea was that if we create new industrial townships, that will reduce the pressure on the mega cities. And as we know, the moment the size of the city start growing below 500,000, the cost of living, cost of maintaining the city, cost of all infrastructure, even cost of land starts shooting up. And that is how it becomes unmanageable. So it is the lack of planning and implementation of the plans is the main cause. And then, as the other colleague said, civic sense. You know, if we can't even keep our cities clean, how can we say it is a livable city? You know, any road or any place you go, if the local body cannot maintain the public space clean, private space, private people can make it, keep it. But the biggest junk, biggest garbage is on the right of ways or the public places like parks or even the drain sidings.
Right.
So it is not an unmanageable thing, but we should have a will to manage it and will to plan for it. I say even if we put an urban design for our main city, main streets at least, you know, what the European cities have. They have a design. They have a visibility, you see. Connaught Place was done. It is a very, the pedestrian friendly and everything. But
Yes.
when we developed the Barakhamba Road and Karjan Road, what happened?
Yes.
You know,
I really wish, for all the bad name that Lutyens Delhi has got for political reasons over the years, I really wish that the rest of Delhi could be a replica of that. But, you make some important points about how...
I give you the example.
So I need to actually take a quick break. I promise to come back to you. Yeah. I need to take a quick break. You've raised some important points. Why are European cities far ahead of us? Apart from the population challenge, there are other important factors on which they are doing far better than India. We will look at that in greater detail after this short break.
When we talk about India, unfortunately the country has the highest burden of road crash fatalities.
तो लगभग 76% लोग pedestrians और two-wheeler वाले हैं जिनकी death हुई है. While the highways are getting better in India, the local roads, the city roads, the town roads, these need to be improved.
This and more. Streaming on News 9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
20,000 people dead and counting. What's happening in the United States of America is unprecedented. You will have to pay for this.
There are beautiful golf courses, there are well-played golf courses, there are great greens. But I think we are a combination of everything.
Now, because of the nature-friendly atmosphere here, plenty of water, you can hear the birds. So lots and lots of birds live on this golf course.
Every corner you have a different vista. You have the beautiful Sayadri range behind you and it's just endless. It keeps going on and on and on and on. So I think no matter what floor you are, you're always slapped in the face by this most amazing view that takes your breath away for a second.
This and more. Streaming on News 9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
How do you fulfill that promise? because ultimately exposes the dead bodies surface but not the living people.
जानना है तो देखिए, समझना है तो सुनिए, सीखना है तो पूछिए, और कमाना है तो खरीदिए। जानकारी, सलाह और निवेश सब
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News 9 Live with me, Neha Khanna, and we're talking about the latest Global Livability Index, which talks about the best cities in the world and the worst cities in the world. Let me go back to Dr. Sudhir Krishna at this point. Dr. Sudhir Krishna, one question that we need to ask ourselves is, what is it that Europe and Australia are doing right and we in India are doing wrong? While, of course, the easy and most obvious answers are that these are rich countries with much lower populations than India. However, aren't the design of the cities and urban planning a big factor here?
Absolutely. I think poverty is not the issue. It is the management. Management of the city is the issue. And actually, cities create wealth. Cities are called the engines of growth, and it is absolutely true. Cities attract wealth, cities attract investment and economic activities, and they create wealth. So if we have to really worry about poverty, we should worry about the rural areas where the income levels are very difficult to sustain. But in urban area, it's a genesis of entire economic activity is urbanization. So that is not the issue. It is a question of management. I think we have not taken good care of city governance and city planning. Vienna is the #1 city, you said, and for the last several years. And if you recall, it is a low-lying area. It's a city of canals, but it gets flooded often. But very soon they recover. So many Japan, the cities get earthquake and they get huge damages, but they recover because local governance system is very strong, and the resilience of the people, resilience of the governance structure at local level is very strong. Here we have got, for everything we depend on one national mission, one national program, some state program. So municipalities are left with only one job, that is the waste management. There is no other work for the municipality except for the garbage management. So that is not the way. It's not the way, unfortunately. So I think a time has come now. We are spending money, but in silos. So the silos don't meet. Somebody makes the road, somebody takes care of water supply, somebody takes care of housing activities and so on. Something has to integrate, and who will integrate? It is city government. So I think it is high time that even for a smart city, you mentioned the smart city mission was driven by a company which was an independent company where municipal corporation had some participation but not the ownership. It was not the owner of the smart city corporation. So I think it is high time that we start everywhere. You see, you go abroad. I used to travel and we used to go on government mission. It was very difficult to meet the mayor, the busiest person. You can meet the union ministers, you can meet many people. But meeting the mayor, not because he didn't want to meet, it was very difficult to find time. So they are so busy, they are so engrossed. So I think it is very high time that city governance is, along with that city planning, city governance, rest will fall in place. Everything is there, money is there, staff is there, we have got technical manpower of highest order. Our technical manpower is ruling the world everywhere, so we are not short of that. And localized planning is very nice. You go localities, as you mentioned about Lutyens Delhi, that is not alone. There are here and there complexes, very nice. New Moti Bagh, you go and see what a fine complex it is. And here and there you find, but integrating that. And all these complexes are gated communities. You want to insulate city as a whole, openness in thought process, openness in our governance framework, local administration is stronger. Sometime we have to sit together and see that over the last 75 years, what all we have done, where things have gone wrong. And there is nothing that we are lacking in terms of resources. It's only kind of putting the jigsaw pieces together to make the whole thing look like shining example. In no time we can beat any country. We can become #1, I guess, in about 5 to 7 years' time if we put our act together.
You make an extremely important point, sir, that it is not as if we lack resources. The problem lies with our management, with poor urban planning and lack of integration. Very often we see that politics gets in the way of infrastructure development. You have one political party that's in power at the local level and another at the state level, and more often than not, they are working at loggerheads, you know, to the detriment of the city and its residents. Unfortunately, we see that all too often here in India, and yes, lack of resources can really not be an excuse, certainly not for a country that is now one of the largest, and fastest growing economies in the world, and one that aims to be a developed nation by 2047. Let me now go back to Dilip Chinoy at this point. Dilip Chinoy, be honest. Aren't you planning to migrate to Vienna or Copenhagen or Zurich or Melbourne or Geneva or Sydney or Auckland over the next few years? Because that's what rich Indians end up doing at the end of the day. I mean, isn't it true, on a more serious note, that over the years, we have seen high net worth individuals leaving India by the hordes? Surely, one of the biggest driving factors is the quality of life that they feel a city in Europe or Australia can offer them, compared to which, frankly, India lags really far behind.
So, Neha, yes, a lot of people are migrating, a lot of people are going out and settling in cities overseas at different age groups, right? We have the largest number of students going out. We also have a lot of business people going out. Living conditions could be one of the important factors. But, there's very interesting that, you say that, because if you look at a lot of Indians in the US, and if in particular they have girl children, they actually come back to India when the girls are growing up, because they feel that India is a better place for the girls to grow up than where they are living, which is actually, a very interesting fact. So yes, it's very interesting. Within India also, you have a lot of people migrating, right? I have a lot of classmates in school who actually came into Hyderabad because they had asthma. So they could not actually study in the town that they were living in, because Hyderabad was a better place to go if you suffered from asthma. So there could be different kinds of reasons, for moving out of your city and living somewhere else, right? But it's not easy to leave your hometown and go and live somewhere else. You'd only do that if you have sufficient means to do that, or you want to go in for education or work or some other related thing which is a necessity. So leaving a city in large numbers to go and settle abroad is not really happening. But within India, we actually had retirement places, and we have the people who are retiring going into different locations, not necessarily staying in the metropolitan cities. Initially, a lot of people moved to Noida and Gurgaon, but that's become equally bad. So Dehradun was a good location. Simla was another location where people looked at it. But even those cities are facing the challenge of rapid population increase, a lot of unplanned building, as Dr. Krishna was saying, in the first segment and also in the second segment there. And you're absolutely right, and he's also absolutely right, that I think we need to take urban city planning and the role of municipalities, very seriously. Just earlier in the day, the Global Champions Summit was being concluded in China, right? And along with the managing director of the World Economic Forum, who were the two guests who were concluding the session? It was the mayor of the city where it was being held, Dalian, and the vice mayor of the city where the next conference is going to be held. That's the type of power and resource and visibility that mayors, let's say in China, and other mayors in I
Or
think,
take London for that matter. I mean, Sadiq Khan keeps getting elected for term after term after term, and these are individuals who are seen as amongst the most high profile and powerful politicians in those countries.
Absolutely. You had a former mayor of London being the Prime Minister.
Absolutely. That's
So,
a great point. That's a great point. So let me take this back to Dr. P.S. Rana. Dr. Rana, do you agree with, Dr. Krishna, who says, no, the problem is not that we lack resources. The problem is poor urban planning, poor management, lack of integration between local governments and state governments. Also, apart from that, I think we can all agree that urban migration does pose a major challenge. But is it not correct that over the last several years, India has indeed lost a very high number of high net worth individuals or rich Indians to other cities? Data backs this. And the primary reason for that is that they believe that, their families can hope to have a better quality of life elsewhere compared to what they have here, despite the high taxes that all of us have to pay as citizens.
Yeah, I started itself with that the money is not the constraint. And I said, let me give two examples, very simple two examples. Can you see any riverfront or river in the European cities which is unmanaged? The river is a prime, livable and very interesting area. And the only example we have in India, because I know I was associated funding it, is the Sabarmati River in Ahmedabad. And I had planned similar thing for Yamuna in Delhi, but we could not take it up. So if we manage even the rivers in all our cities and the, water bodies, we have even such laws like CRZ. That means we can't go even to the bank of the river or the sea. We have to keep it away, and then that area become all open for garbage and dumping. Now, another area which is very important, I can tell you, do you see the problem of parking in our cities? It is pure management problem.
Every other day you see fights breaking out over parking, sir. Every other day you see fights breaking out over parking.
I say it is not only the fight is important, it is the total management of the, parking is a means of traffic management.
It's a mess.
As and if I can tell you, I started pushing with the government in 1972 to set up a traffic engineering and management cell in every city. I remember when I was planning for the Asia 72, the Pragati Maidan, and this hexagon was created around the India Gate. People were saying, oh, why it is needed? I said, not for today, it will be required for 50, 60 years back, later. At that time, I happened to be with the Town and Country Planning Organization, and I had this opportunity.
Right.
So unless you plan, say if your roads are planned from property line to property line and managed, your look of the city will change totally.
Absolutely. So it boils down to better and more efficient planning, integration, and of course, efficient fund allocation. There is no dearth of resources. Ask
Even for
the
Bombay.
BMC, and yet our cities turn into rivers at the drop of a hat, and the rivers unfortunately are drying up. Well, that's another.
I tell you, for Bombay, I proposed a development
Yes.
along Thane Creek as a lake of 3,000 hectares in the development, so that all the slums could be accommodated. But again, because the floods, as you say, the Bombay is flooded. The idea was that whenever there is a heavy rain and high tide together, we need a reservoir capacity at the sea level to absorb it.
But unfortunately, it all remains wishful thinking. All of it remains on paper. Very little is actually implemented on the ground. Therefore, yes, we need to get our acts together. Our civic agencies need to get our acts together. And while I agree that all of us as citizens have a role to play, but I think it's also important for us to hold our civic agencies accountable. I am not sure they have enough accountability in this country. I think that also is a big factor. On that note, gentlemen, I'm completely out of time. So I'd like to thank Dr. Sudhir Krishna, Dilip Chinoy, Dr. P.S. Rana and Dr. Ishwar Gilada for joining me on Global Lens tonight. All right, let's now turn our attention to the UK elections that are around the corner. In a final pre-election debate on Wednesday night, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and opposition Labour Party leader Keir Starmer argued loudly and fiercely with each other on various issues such as the cost of living, taxes, welfare, immigration and even gender. Prime Minister Sunak, who's believed to be in danger of losing his own seat, Richmond, repeatedly warned the voters during the 75-minute debate not to surrender to Labour. Sunak's Conservative Party has been in power for 14 years and has lagged behind Labour in one opinion poll after another by at least 20 points. The Economist has predicted a Tory wipeout in Britain. Following the COVID pandemic, Britons have seen 4 Conservative Prime Ministers, crumbling public services and a spiralling cost of living crisis.
Because this isn't just what's happened this week, last week in the Gambling Commission. We saw Partygate earlier in this Parliament. The Prime Minister himself was convicted and fined for breaking the rules which he brought in and imposed on everybody else.
I also think leadership means being straight with people. It means having the courage of your convictions, not changing your mind on every single position that you've taken and being upfront about what you want to do for the country. That's not what Keir Starmer is doing. He's not being honest with everyone about his plans to raise their taxes.
Because they're not being processed, they cannot be returned to where they came from. Can they, Prime Minister? If he wants to correct that, now's his chance to do it.
They cannot be returned. Well, do you know where these people come from?
No, he's not answering the question.
Do you know where they come from? Iran,
you can see.
Syria, Afghanistan. So when Keir Starmer says he's going to return people, is he going to sit down? Are you going to sit down with the Iranian ayatollahs? Are you going to try and do a deal with the Taliban? It's completely nonsensical what you are saying, right? You are taking people for fools, right? I think that these people should not stay in our country. They will be on planes to Rwanda. That's what I will do with them. You still can't answer the question. What will you do with them?
All the tens of thousands.
All the illegal migrants who arrive will be processed and put on planes to Rwanda. There is a choice on that question at this election, because Keir Starmer is not matched my pledge to reform the Equalities Act to pass new law. That is the only way to deliver on what Vicky says. And the reason he won't do that, I don't know, but he can explain, is because he's not sure, like I am, that when it comes to these matters, sex means biological sex, and that's how you protect female-only spaces and services.
Keir Starmer?
Yes is the answer to the question. It's very important that we protect women's spaces. But what I will also say is that I do recognise that there are a small number of people who are born into a gender that they don't identify with, and I will treat them, as I treat all human beings, with dignity and respect. And I'll tell you for why. I'll tell you for why. Because if you don't, you end up with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom standing in Parliament making an anti-trans joke in front of the mother of a murdered trans teenager. I will never, ever allow myself to be put into that position.
Well, our next story is about yet another failed coup. Let's get you a complete lowdown. The Bolivian police have arrested the leader of what they say was an attempted coup hours after the presidential palace was stormed by soldiers. Hundreds of troops and armoured vehicles had taken up position on Murillo Square, where key government buildings are located. One armoured vehicle attempted to smash down the entrance to the presidential palace. Soldiers later withdrew from the South American city. The military leader in charge, General Juan Jose Zuniga, had said he wanted to restructure democracy in the country and that while he respected the president, for now, there would be a change of government. He was later arrested seconds after telling reporters that the military had staged the intervention at the president's request.
What appeared to be a coup attempt by soldiers in Bolivia failed on Wednesday. A top general leading armed forces allied to him tried to storm the presidential palace in La Paz, with eyewitness video showing an armored vehicle ram palace doors and soldiers rush in. But they quickly pulled back in the evening. And the general, Juan Jose Zuniga, was arrested hours later on live TV, taken away and later replaced. A Reuters witness saw soldiers withdraw from the central Plaza Murillo Square, home to the presidential palace and Congress. People continued to gather, heeding an earlier call from President Luis Arce to resist the coup attempt.
This is a historic afternoon, not just because the people have retaken Plaza Murillo, but because of a failed coup attempt. I believe the Bolivian people should be at ease. All Bolivians are uniting.
Arce himself later appeared from a balcony and thanked the public.
It fills us with bravery, courage to keep resisting, to keep on resisting any coup attempt. Because Bolivia deserves its democracy, which has been won in the streets and with blood, brothers and sisters.
The president replaced General Zuniga by swearing in Jose Wilson Sanchez as the new military commander and called for calm and order to be restored. Tension is building in Bolivia ahead of general elections next year. Zuniga has recently hit out at leftist ex-president Evo Morales, saying he should not be allowed to return and threatening to block him if he does. Morales is planning a return to power by running against Arce, his one-time socialist ally. Zuniga had also spoken to reporters in the square, saying that anger was growing in the landlocked country. Bolivia has been battling an economic slump with depleted central bank reserves as well as pressure on the Boliviano currency as exports of gas dry up. The public prosecutor's office said it would launch a criminal investigation against Zuniga and others involved in the attempted coup.
All right, let's now get you some news from the United States. There has been a concerning increase in anti-conversion laws, hate speech and demolitions of homes and places of worship for members of minority faith communities in India. That is what US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said at a press conference on Wednesday. In his remarks at the release of the annual State Department report on international religious freedom, Blinken said that at the same time, people around the world are also working hard to protect religious freedom. The report states that senior US officials continue to raise concerns about religious freedom issues with their Indian counterparts.
In India, we see a concerning increase in anti-conversion laws, hate speech, demolitions of homes and places of worship for members of minority faith communities. At the same time, people around the world are also working hard to protect religious freedom.
China has expelled its former defense ministers Li Shangfu and his predecessor from the ruling Communist Party over corruption allegations, deepening a sweeping purge within the top ranks of the military. Li was removed from his post in October last year without explanation after he vanished from public view for 2 months amid a series of high-level shake-ups that have roiled the world's largest military. Li's mysterious disappearance and drastic ouster just months into his job fueled intense speculation, coming as it did after the surprise sacking of 2 top generals of the PLA rocket force, an elite unit overseeing China's nuclear and ballistic missiles, also without explanation. Today's announcement is the first official confirmation from Chinese authorities that graft allegations are behind his dramatic disappearance. In a sign of the scale of the high-level purges, Li's predecessor, Wei Fenghe, was also expelled from the Communist Party today over alleged corruption. Both Li and Wei were former members of the Central Military Commission, a powerful body headed by Chinese President Xi Jinping, who ultimately commands the armed forces. Li was placed under the military's internal investigation over serious violations of party discipline and law in August last year, 2 days after he was last seen in public at a security forum in Beijing. All right, and as we wrap up this edition of Global Lens, here's another story from the United States. Reality TV star and hotel heiress Paris Hilton has called for greater federal oversight of youth care programs in the United States. On Wednesday, Hilton spoke at a U.S. House of Representatives committee hearing where she described her own traumatic experience in youth care facilities. The 43-year-old great-granddaughter of Hilton Hotels founder Conrad Hilton has spoken publicly about the emotional and physical abuse she endured when she was placed in residential youth treatment facilities as a teenager. In her remarks to the committee, Hilton described being taken from her bed in the middle of the night at the age of 16 and transported across state lines to a residential facility where she experienced physical and sexual abuse. She said her experience at a Utah facility left her with post-traumatic stress disorder.
They would always have a staff member sitting right next to me. So if I said even one negative thing about the facility, they immediately would hang up the phone, and then I would be punished and either physically beaten or thrown into solitary confinement. And then they would take away my phone privileges and not let me speak to my parents. So they had no idea what was happening because they were continually being lied and manipulated by the staff that were trained to do that. And there were other children in there, were foster children, and they had nobody to call, no one to talk to. So all of the kids in these places, they're not able to speak to their families without someone sitting right next to them. So it's really difficult to be able to tell anyone what's happening in the outside world.
Well, that's all the time we have on this edition of Global Lens. Thanks so much for watching. Do join us at the same time tomorrow. Good night.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
जानना है तो देखिए, समझना है तो सुनिए, सीखना है तो पूछिए, और कमाना है तो खरीदिए। जानकारी, सलाह और निवेश सब एक ही सुपर ऐप पर। पैसे का सवाल है तो जवाब है मनी 9। आजादी पैसे की, अभी डाउनलोड करें।
The confidence is certainly back in the market.
Do tighten your seat belt so that you can withstand volatility.
I have one humble request to all the viewers of News9 is that please don't go, there will be a lot of choppiness, there will be a lot of volatility. Look at long term, don't look at short term.